there is a global ocean that bears India's name, but does that make it Indian Ocean? Kyunki this is a question that is now being asked a lot because of something that has happened recently. So this is actual footage that the Americans have released of them blowing up IRIS Dena, which was an Iranian naval ship blown up in the Indian Ocean. Now, why does this concern India? या ये मतलब इतना सवाल क्यों उठ रहा है इस पे कि भाई is Indian Ocean India's ocean? क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं the IRIS Dena had come and participated in an exercise called MILAN 2026 with the Indian Navy. Now, this was a multi-navy exercise, but still the point was that this was a ship that had come to India, and as it was going back from India, it had come as India's guest, right? Welcomes IRIS Dena on her arrival, reflecting long-standing cultural links between the two nations. So, in such a case, there is naturally a question of कि भाई what is the responsibility that we have in this region? क्योंकि अगर हमारे naval chief की बात सुने हम, तो Indian Ocean is named after us. If we don't take action, then who will? And इसके लिए there are three things that we need to understand. One, we will talk about in today's video about UNCLOS. Second, we will talk about कि भाई who are the security providers in the Indian Ocean, actually, which are the navies which have the strongest presence in the Indian Ocean. That's the second part. And the third part we will talk about is the global impact of what has been done by the Americans, the legality of it, या मतलब आगे इससे क्या चीजें हम expect कर सकते हैं. So let's get started. Now, for those of you that are meeting me for the first time, this is a brief intro about me. My name is Abhijeet Yadav. I come from IIT background. I dropped out of IIM Calcutta. Then I went on to clear UPSC Civil Services Exam 2 times. Thereafter, I've been teaching geography with UPSCprep.com, where I'm also the co-founder. So if you're interested in any courses from us, you can check out the UPSC Essential course by visiting courses.upscprep.com. Now, back to the action. The first part, let's begin with, is UNCLOS. Now, UNCLOS is UN Convention of the Law of the Seas, and this is a globally accepted, norm. जिसमें क्या रहता है कि भाई everybody has agreed that this is how we will mark out areas of the sea. So let's say that this is your baseline, this is where the land is ending. So from here to 12 nautical miles, right? Nautical miles kya hai? 1 nautical mile is 1852 meter. This is a unit of measurement that is followed in sea and air transport. Kyunki this has to do with 1 arc second of a latitude. Technical detail, let it be. So 12 nautical mile तक आपका territorial sea है, meaning all the laws of your country are valid over here and this is to be treated as the territory of that country. But from here to 200 nautical miles, this is your exclusive economic zone, right? Only the country which has this land can mine in this area, can explore for petroleum, can explore for natural gas. मतलब कुछ भी economic activity अगर इस area में हो रही है, fishing, anything, then that exclusive right belongs to that country, right? Naturally, there are some countries which are closer than this 200 nautical miles, so therefore equal sharing वहाँ पे हो जाती है. Now, there is a small exception over here. In the areas where the continental shelf क्या है? This part. Where the continental shelf extends to a certain region, countries can submit rights of up to 350 nautical miles. But this is exception. माने कि countries have to submit कि भाई नहीं ये हमारा इधर भी area है. Like for example, west coast of India has a very broad continental shelf. East coast of India, not so much. तो in that case, हमारा ये जो nautical miles है, यहाँ पे हमको फायदा दे रही है. Now, generally, 200 nautical miles is considered the limit. This is automatically. Beyond this are what are known as the high seas. Now, high seas का क्या मतलब है? That all countries have freedom of movement, freedom of any sort of thing that they want to do in these regions. कि भाई कोई टेस्ट करना है या भाई मतलब आपको मतलब इंटरनेशनल वाटर में फिशिंग करनी है, whatever it is. So there is no limitation from any individual country. Now let's look at what exactly happened. So what exactly happened is कि भाई ये श्रीलंका का हमारा exclusive economic zone है. And look at मतलब the territorial zone might be something over here, right? 12 nautical miles. Something very close by over there कि भाई यहीं पे almost आपका ये attack हुआ है to blow up. And then this is not too far away from India. And कायदे से अगर देखा जाए तो India is a strong naval presence in this region. And अगर इंडिया को पता भी नहीं चला कि भाई यहाँ पे कुछ हो रहा है या there is some activity, because it's not like कि ये जो naval ship जा रही थी उसको सबमरीन ने एक दिन randomly वो सड़क पे दिख गया तो उड़ा दिया. I'm sure it was following it. If it was following it, it was following it for a while. So was India aware of this? If it was aware, do we should we take action? Should we condemn this attack? So all of these questions are questions that need to be raised. But before we get there, we have to understand what is the actual security situation in the Indian Ocean. So iske liye, let's have a look at a bigger map. Now, अगर actual security situation हम देखें तो Indian Ocean में Indian Navy is not the only navy present. मतलब there are obviously navies of a lot of these rim countries, but there are bigger navies that are present in India. For example, over here on the Chagos archipelago, there is an island called Diego Garcia. Right, Diego Garcia hosts an American base. तो अगर आप Google Earth पे जाके Diego Garcia को ढूंढते हो यहाँ पे, तो you'll see India. यहाँ पे हमारे लक्षद्वीप islands. Over here you have Maldives. Further down south you have this Chagos archipelago, British Indian Ocean Territory as it is called. This whole thing is the Chagos archipelago. And यहाँ पे we want to look at something very specific. With this is the Diego Garcia base. And the Diego Garcia base के बीच में there is a big massive airstrip. And on this airstrip you will see a C-17 Globemaster. So this is a very heavy transport aircraft which the US armed forces also use, but India also has 7-8 of them. Naturally, यहाँ पे अगर ये रखा है तो it is a major resupply point over here. तो American base यहाँ पे है. अब Chinese bases की अगर हम बात करते हैं तो Chinese bases are there is obviously Gwadar port over here. There is a Djibouti port over here. There is another port in the Maldives over here. There is Hambantota port over here. There is Chittagong port over here. There is Sittwe over here. There is another Chinese port in the Cocos Islands over here. So you will see that the Chinese Navy is also pretty strongly present in this region. And this is what was known as the string of pearls. कि string of pearls. अब कायदे से China ने यहाँ क्यों किया है? Because again, this region is providing oil to everybody. And the Chinese are obviously importing a lot of their oil. 60% of their oil they have to import. This is something that I also recently learned, that China has a lot of petroleum reserves, but obviously they consume so much that they have to import a lot. So Chinese ने imports क्यों बना रखे हैं? In order to ensure security of their cargo. But अब क्योंकि this port or this strait, this is the Strait of Hormuz, has been closed by the Iranians. So therefore energy crisis hai, and therefore a lot of things are going on over here. So in all of this, Indian Navy has a responsibility. It is the Indian Ocean, and obviously we have the best presence over here. The Chinese, if they have to come all the way from here and then project any sort of military presence over here. The Americans have just one small base. India has the entire coastline to project from. But at the same time, the military hardware that you have and the kind of projection that you can do is something that's very different. So which brings us to the third part of the discussion today. कि भाई क्या ये सब legal है and कैसे करना चाहिए, क्या, how do I look at this? So we need to look at two things. First is the War Powers Resolution of 1973. So this is a resolution which was passed by the American Congress, which said that the president by himself or herself cannot declare war on any country. And therefore, President Trump has very, nicely said that we are doing major combat operations in Iran. Not war, we are doing major combat operations, right? अभी technical legality है जो सब कुछ उसको side में रखो, but practically, if I look at it, so then Iran has been bombed, right? All of their infrastructure is already down the drain. अगर अगले महीने को आके US Congress जाग के बोलता है कि no, this was illegal, how will that make a difference? They are not going to, then suddenly sprout up all the infrastructure that has been destroyed. So that is number one. Even if it is legal or not legal, there are some issues over here. दूसरी चीज UNCLOS के हिसाब से भी अगर देखें तो this was something that was in the exclusive economic zone of Sri Lanka. Right, exclusive economic zone में there are no limitations of sovereignty. Meaning, अगर 12 nautical miles के अंदर होता, so then naturally, Sri Lanka could have claimed that the US has sovereignty का उल्लंघन हुआ है. But क्योंकि अब this was close to, I think about 25 miles of the coast of Sri Lanka. So exclusive economic zone में है ये very easily, but not within the territorial waters. So this is sort of a gray area. And अब कायदे से अगर देखा जाए, if two countries are at war, so naturally if the US has a chance of destroying the navy of Iran, which is far away from the Iranian home base, they will do it. तो वॉर का जो जस्टिफिकेशन होता है दैट ऑल इज फेयर इन लव एंड वॉर, अब ओवर यूज्ड है, बट लाइक दिस इज व्हाट दैट एक्चुअली मीन्स कि दैट द इंटरनेशनल कन्वेंशन विल गो फॉर अ टॉस प्रोवाइडेड कि भाई वी आर एक्चुअली एट वॉर, विच ब्रिंग्स अस बैक टू दैट टैंगल ऑफ कि भाई इज इट वॉर, इज इट मेजर कॉम्बैट ऑपरेशंस. वॉर नहीं है तो देन अब practically what has happened, the ship has been blown up. So this brings us to the second question, which is, should India condemn this? Why? Because what is the ground to ask India to condemn this? One, obviously the IRIS Dena was doing an exercise in India at the Vizag port, and agar wahan se aapke think of it this way, that a friend of yours has come to visit and then as soon as they get out of your house they are like blown up. Do you have some responsibility? Maybe, maybe not. Because this is also something that we have to keep in mind, that we want to keep our strategic autonomy. अगर इंडिया कंडेम कर भी देता है तो क्या होगा? nothing. The Americans will just mark out, and President Trump is famous for this in that कि भाई तुमने मेरा साथ नहीं दिया, तुम मेरे पीछे नहीं आए, तो दफा हो जाओ, I'm not friends with you anymore. So by condemning this, do we gain anything? Yes, maybe the moral high ground, maybe the right to say that we stood by and said if something was wrong. But if actually we condemn this, तो हो क्या रहा है? Maybe the Americans will retaliate. They will say that we will not give you, or we will put sanctions, this, that, XYZ. Now President Trump के sanctions का अलग problem चल रहा है, but there is a bigger problem at stake for India over here, that if in the Indian Ocean region other countries can come and blow up anything and everything that they want without even, let's say, informing India, or consulting तो दूर की बात है, inform भी नहीं किया कि भैया ऐसा कुछ होने वाला, just like हो गया देख लेना. And not even that, they did not even send a communication directly to India. They announced it to the world कि भाई this has happened. So then that raises some questions about कि भाई if we do really want to become a superpower, should we allow this to happen in our backyard? क्योंकि अदरवाइज वी विल जस्ट बी रेलिगेटेड टू अ रीजनल पावर कि भाई ये तो ऐसा छुटमुट इधर ही चलता रहता है इनका, ज्यादा कुछ टेंशन लेने की जरूरत नहीं है, जो करना है करो. बिकॉज इफ दैट इज द केस, सो देन पावर प्रोजेक्शन बिकम्स अ गेम, एंड वो पावर प्रोजेक्शन के गेम में राइट नाउ वी आर एट अ बैकफुट. बट एट द सेम टाइम पावर प्रोजेक्शन के साथ साथ जो स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑटोनॉमी वाली हमारी चीजें चलती हैं, उसकी वजह से बिकॉज ऑफ द क्लोजिंग ऑफ द स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज, नाउ रशियन ऑयल जिसके लिए सैंक्शंस हुए थे, जिसके लिए इतना सब मगजमारी करी थी, that is back on the table because India imports 80% of our fuel, and no matter what the Americans are going to say XYZ, if fuel is threatened to such an extent, क्योंकि Iranian, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, इन सब से इंडिया ऑयल लेता है, तो if it is blocked, Russian oil is going to be very very helpful. So that's what you have to keep in mind कि भाई globally इन सब चीजों का कुछ ना कुछ प्रॉब्लम आएगा. नाउ अ सेकंड प्रॉब्लम दैट्स गोना कम अप विद द वॉर एस्केलेटिंग इन सच अ मैनर इज दैट चाइना इज वाचिंग. एंड चाइना क्या देख रहा है, दैट इन ऑल ऑफ दिस द अमेरिकन्स आर स्पेंडिंग अ लॉट ऑफ मनी, राइट? The Americans are spending money as if nothing matters, but there is a problem. There is a problem of asymmetric warfare. And in asymmetric war, Iranians are using drones. Drones which cost, let's say, something around 40,000 US dollars. Right? And in order to stop these drones, the Americans are using Patriot missiles and the THAAD system, which is the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense. तो जो हमारा ये सिस्टम है, it looks scary, it's effective. I'm not saying not effective, but it is massively expensive. $1 million. एक मिसाइल थर्ड सिस्टम की is 1 million, drones 40,000. So the Iranians are dumping their drones and the Americans are running out of these missiles. And since they are running out of these missiles, the Chinese are looking कि भाई as soon as they feel that the Americans will no longer be able to defend, they will come and take Taiwan. And this is the global implication कि भाई ये छोटी सी चीज हुई है in which the Americans have broken precedents of the last 70 years in which they said कि there is a rules-based global order. They have simply said कि might is right and whoever has the might can do whatever they want. So what the Chinese are now doing, and which India is also hopefully doing, is that we're sitting, waiting patiently for the time to come. And that's all that I wanted to discuss in today's video. All the best.